So Banjo Buddies, so we're going to be looking at the 4-chord song, which is basically the first 4 chords you want to try and master and get memorized so that you can play a lot of those classic country banjo songs as well as some modern pop classics as well. So this will really help you get going, and if we can memorize those shapes, then we can then start working on our picking. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to strum an open G chord to start with, and to do this we're going to use our thumb pick. If you're wearing a thumb pick, you can do it with just the thumb if you want, and we can have it at a 45-degree angle and just brush down the strings. This will sound like this. Shouldn't be too much resistance. Have a nice comfortable relaxed wrist. Push through those strings and get a nice even sound. That's all we're going to do for every chord so that we can fully concentrate on that left hand. Okay, so that first chord of G, as you can see, is just all the open notes, and on the diagram it shows this by showing a little picture of the fretboard. So this little black line here is the nut, which is the bit that holds the strings here. Conveniently it's black, it's the same color as the one on the sheet, but sometimes they can be white or a different color. And we have our 5 lines coming down, which is our strings, and it's kind of angled up like this. And the idea is that the first string will be the one on the right of the diagram, and the 5th string, which is our drone string, the one with the peg halfway up, will be the one on the left. So it goes 1 2 3 4 5 from right to left there. Don't blame me, I didn't invent this, so if it's confusing anyway, it's just we've got to get used to it. That's what it looks like. If you're left-handed, it can be difficult because you might want to flip it the other way around. I would just get used to it like this way because this is what you see in most books. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to just brush that down a few times and say G. Get that in your head, you know that's G, that's the open G chord. And when you feel comfortable with that, which should be fairly quickly, we're going to look at the D7 chord. We've got the D7 and the D chord. Now the reason being is D7 is just a version of D that's a little bit easier to play, and it works really well with the G. So you could start off with that one, and if you're starting to feel comfortable, then we go to the slightly more complicated or more difficult to finger, the D chord. Now the idea really with all these chords that are slightly difficult, ones where you might have to stretch your fingers a little bit or use more fingers, is to have that thumb in the right position. If you haven't got your thumb in the right position, you will find it difficult going forward. So if we look at the D7 to start with, we've got our first finger on the 1st fret. Now frets, this is the metal part, and when we place our first finger, when we say the 1st fret, it means we're fretting the 1st fret by pushing down behind the fret so that we can then create that note. Now if I was to then put the 2nd finger on the 2nd fret but on the 3rd string, so 3rd strings from the bottom, 1 2 3, then strum all the way down, and this time we're going to strum from the D, so we're going to strum from the 4th string. So we're strumming from that 4th string, and that's a D7 chord. Now it sounds quite nice when you play that with a G. Then you put it on, take it off. Now you can see my thumb. Thumb is absolutely key. If I was to have my thumb up here, you can see what it does to my fingers. It squashes them in, it pushes them close to the strings, which means I'm going to get muffles and I'm not going to get the strength. What you want to do is you want to see this little C shape with your finger you're creating there, and you're squeezing and pushing the two together. And the equal pressure that you're squeezing will give you a really good support, but it also will enable your fingers to carry on with the C shape. If your thumb's up and you don't get the C shape, watch what it does to the fingers. It squashes it in against the frets and the strings, and you don't really have good balance there. So you want to have it like this, so you're squeezing together like that, and as much as you can, keeping your fingers over the strings. It will be awkward to start with, and you might feel really uncomfortable and you want to keep it up there. But you're going to run into lots of problems going further ahead, especially if we start doing the D chord shape, and you haven't got your thumb there. Your thumb will be up there, and that will mean that you're going to find it really difficult to keep that strong. So what you want to do is get the D7 with the thumb supporting the chord. It could be anywhere around here, preferably around about the fret that you're, like the 1st fret into the 2nd fret, anywhere around there, because it's still supporting those fingers nicely. And if it pokes up a little bit, that's okay. You don't want it too low either. You just want to have it in a position where it's on the verge of being a little bit uncomfortable, but still so that you can hear all the strings clearly and you're getting a good sound. Now, as I've been playing a long time, I can have my thumb, and you will see good players have their thumb in poor positions because their fingers have become very agile, and it means they're so much more flexible that they can be a bit lazy with their thumb. But you watch them when they do a really difficult chord, you'll see them suddenly the thumb will disappear to support, unless they've got unusual like appendages. But you will normally see them like actually bring their thumb into position to do those more difficult chords. So it's a good exercise from the beginning to have the thumb, especially on the D7, and then when you lift off, the thumb hasn't changed position, it's still in the same position. So the open G and D7 will be your first practice point. Strum once on each, and if you want to make it more musical, you could just strum 4 on each. And obviously I'm doing this D7 chord and I'm strumming it from the 4th like it says in the diagram, but don't worry if you start hitting, you know, we don't want to worry too much about the right hand, we will get better at that. We just want to really focus on memorizing the shape, because if we don't have to worry about the shape and when we're concentrating on the fingerings, it will make life easier than having to look up and down all the time, and it can really slow your progress. So yeah, once you've got that G and you've got that D7, here's the D. The D is a little bit more complicated, and the idea is that you're going to use the first finger on the 2nd fret, and that will be on the 3rd string. Second finger, this will go on the 3rd fret on the 2nd string, and the 3rd finger, which is where it becomes problematic because you're stretching out your fingers in a more unnatural position. So if you do find that difficult, stick with the D7 for a while and get that with the thumb in the right position. And then because your thumb is set in the right position on the D7, it means that when you go to do a D, my thumb hasn't actually changed at all. If I do D7, D there, but if you do D7 with your thumb like this, and then you go to do a D, you won't be able to do it like that, and you'll find it really difficult to then force your thumb to come round. So you're changing your thumb because it's a difficult chord. Start like that to start with. That is absolutely the key to getting your fingers play those more difficult chords. So the D chord, 1, 2, and 3, we'll put that on the 3rd string on that 2nd fret, and then on the 3rd fret on the 2nd string, then on the 1st string here on the 4th fret. And the idea is that if I play that one down from the same string, the 4th string, so that's just a D chord, a pure D chord. Like I said, just strum it. Get used to it, then play the open. So if I was going between a D and an open G, I'd literally just be playing it and lifting. But notice the thumb hasn't changed. That's absolutely, I will probably hammer that on quite a few times. But the thumb, for me, is definitely what will enable you to get better at those more difficult chords a lot quicker. Just a little word on the D chord. Now you can play it with the little finger instead of the 3rd finger if you're finding it quite difficult, but don't substitute it if your thumb's up here. So if your thumb's up here, you still need to get the thumb low to support. Watch what happens if I take my D chord, how I did it before, and put my little finger in. See what it does to my finger? It bunches them up and I have to twist my hand a little bit around. And the reason for that is because the little finger is a lot shorter. It's a lot shorter than those other 3 fingers that are together, quite close, and they're going to be stronger and more agile. So it makes more sense to be using the stronger, more agile fingers to do these chords, and a lot of the chord shapes that you will be learning will be using the stronger fingers first. The little finger is usually used if you need the extra note or the stretch, and we do want to develop the little finger, but certainly early on you want to try and do it with the strongest fingers, and the thumb is way more important. So even if you did it with the little finger, the thumb would need to be in the middle, and ideally just try and get used to those 3 fingers. So that is the D and the D7. Let's look at some other chords now. Let's look, we're going to look at the minor chord, the next chord. It's not the C, we're going to look at the E minor one. So let's get this across here before I lose the plot. So E minor there, and what you want to do is, for this one especially, you want to use so the thumb will be, if you like, at the back. This will be the 1st finger, 2nd, 3rd and 4th. So when I'm fingering the E minor, I'm going to use my second finger. So this is the first finger, so I'm going to use the second finger, and then I'm going to use the third finger. So my little finger's not used, and the first finger's not going to be used. Now, there is a real big reason for that, and why I didn't want you to do the C chord just yet. So that's an E minor chord. That's a 2-finger chord, so it's not too bad. Notice my thumb is in the same position as it was before. Now my thumb's come a little bit higher there, but that's not a big deal. Mainly if the chords are lifting, the thumb may move ever so slightly, but that's because I'm trying to stay in line with this top finger more, so it's risen a little bit. But when I come down to do the D chord, in fact there's not much movement. It's more like a rolling thing. It's more like rolling like this, rather than actually physically moving. So there's E minor there. So the E minor there, I'm playing that one. You can see my thumb is not resting anywhere awkward. It's still in the same place. And I'm strumming from that 4th string. But you can strum this one from the 5th string as well. The throwing string's fine. And practice playing some soft strums, some heavier strums. Generally just try and keep a regular rhythm and then lift off. Then put it down again. So the trick is also with these chords is when you are lifting off and putting your fingers down, that you're bringing your fingers off the fretboard, but only ever so slightly. What you don't want to do, which would be really, really hard to do when you first start doing it, is pull them all away like that and lift it miles away from the fretboard. You want to aim on getting it just off and down. And if you have to do that so slowly that it hurts, so be it. So you do it really slowly, lift off ever so slightly. Concentrate hard, steam coming out your ears, and then come back down again. Lift off ever so slightly, come back down again. And that's how thorough you have to be. You have to be really slow. It's a bit painful at the beginning because you have to think, and like I said about the steam coming out your ears, you're concentrating quite hard on just doing these very basic things. But it's all programming the brain to comprehend what you're physically trying to do. And when it becomes second nature and you don't have to think about it, we can throw on these other complicated actions that we've got to do. So that E minor, lift it off slightly. E minor, lift it off slowly. So even the same with the D, you've got the D, lift it off slowly. Or just slightly lifting it off D shape. Don't rush yourself. Try and get a balance between getting a nice tone and nice sound when you're strumming the chord, and then lifting off. When you start to get that, you can start doing the strums and just keep doing the down strums and just lift it off wherever you want. And get used to really just keeping the downbeat, keeping that strum. Eventually we're going to be picking, and that makes it a lot more complicated because you have to think a lot about what you're hitting with this hand. But at the moment we're just thinking about lifting off, and you can do it, just keep a regular beat and just lift off wherever you feel comfortable, and then have these fingers so they're ever so slightly lifting off the strings. And if they come too far away, be aware of it and go, right, okay, that's not going to help, because now you've got to find all your finger position. But it's only slightly, it's already there, it's holding the position. So once you've got that, now this is the clever thing, we're going to go to the C chord now, finally. So let's move that along so you can see the C chord a bit clearer. Yeah, there you go. There's a C shape. That's what we want. Right, so there's a C chord. Now the idea will be that you've done the E minor chord. So if you've still got the E minor shape, which is the second and the third finger, see this first finger that's free? We're just going to place that down on the second string on the first fret, and I've got a C chord. So the E minor is almost all the C. So we've got E minor, and just placing the finger down for a C. So already those 2 chords are pretty straightforward. And we can play all the strings because the G string, the drone string, is in a C chord, so we can play all of them. Lift it off for an E minor. This will be the same thing. Is you're putting it on, you're taking it off, put it on, put it off. Notice the thumb hasn't moved. You really want, if I go to all these chords, my thumb can pretty much stay. It might roll and move a little bit as my fingers move, but I'm keeping it in a very similar position so that it's not forcing my fingers to come away from the fretboard or do anything awkward where it's hurting and stretching. So the 2 really key things is gonna be that thumb position, and then lifting off ever so slightly when you're practicing the change between the chords and trying to keep the shapes. So if we go through what those 4 chords sound like together, so I'm going to zoom in. It's quite hard using a mouse with finger picks, but there you go, I'll persevere. So there you go, I'll get better. So you got your G, D7, D, E minor and C. And the trick will be to play through all of them in that sequence. So we're just going to do that now. We're going to get the G chord, give it 1 strum like it says on the sheet. Okay, now we're going to get ready with our D7 by having the first finger in the right place, which is on the 2nd string on the 1st fret. Then we're going to play it on that 3rd string on the 2nd fret, and we're going to strum that. So we've got and to get that finger now, D7's there. Let's start again. Get the fingers like just hovering off. Do the G chord, back to the D7. Now skip the D for the minute, because this would be the easiest version. So we're going to use a D7 instead of a D. There's a G, there's a D7. Now we're going to swap to the E minor, which is that 2nd finger's got to move up to the 2nd fret there. 3rd finger's got to move down to the 2nd fret on the 1st string. And there's the E minor. And then place your finger down for the C. Now you can see that doesn't look like you're doing an awful lot, but it takes a lot of brain power and a lot of focus to get it clear and right and concise, and not lift your fingers all the way and not have your thumb in the wrong place. So what we're going to do it again. We've got the G chord. This is the easy version with the D7 instead of the D. I'm just going to strum it. We'll have the fingers ready. So if you get on the D7 first and then lift it off, that makes it really easy to get that D7. So you've got your G, then the D7, lift that 2nd finger up, put the 3rd finger in for that E minor. Now all I've got to do is drop the 1st finger down, look, and then I've got my C. Now those 4 chords in that order are used in so many songs, and there's a video on on YouTube, Axes of Awesome, and they play the 4 chord song, and they're playing various instruments in it, but there's a lot of like songs, like country songs, blues songs, rock songs that use this same progression. So it's a really good one to start with because it sounds musical, it sounds familiar, which is always a good place to start. And Country Roads, believe it or not, uses this progression in the chorus, so you might hear Country Roads in there as you play it. So we've got G chord, and we can do 4 strums, D7, then we can do the E minor, put the 1st finger down for the C, G, D7, E minor, and the C. There you go. There you go, nice. And if this is what it sounds like, we're going to go G, D, E minor, C. So there's my G, there's my D. Notice my thumb nice and low, E minor. Put that 1st finger in again, C. There's a D, E minor. And the same rules apply as with the D7, keeping the fingers as close, trying to not lift them too far away, anchoring that thumb, Take everything really slow, practice really slow. You'll get better, you have to persevere. It's very painful and slow at the beginning, but when it starts to connect, it's quite magical and you'll enjoy it. And a lot of banjo songs don't consist of a lot of chords, and these chords, there are absolutely thousands of songs you better play with these chords. So if you just can get these handful of chords working together and getting your fingers do the right thing, you're going to have a lot of fun, and then we can actually do a lot more with this right hand and add some cool stuff. Okay, best of luck, and I will see you again soon.